Reprinted. You can't see straight.
Thank you so much. Yes, sir. Thank you. Jeff, fill that out for me and just give it to me.
I gave to Taylor.
Oh, perfect. You're on top of it.
All right, I got 7 o'clock. We'll call this meeting to order. If you please stand for the invocation, and please remain standing for the pledge. Don, will you lead us in prayer?
May we pray. Gracious Heavenly Father, thank you for the many blessings of life you've given us. You've given this community, Lord. Thank you, especially during this Christmas season, where we can express our love and kindness and tenderness to all of our fellow citizens. Help us to always strive to do the right thing, Lord. Give us the knowledge, skills, and abilities to make the correct decisions here as far as working within the city government. And help us to always keep our eyes on the prize of Jesus Christ, my true Lord and Savior. For it's in the blessed name of Jesus we do pray. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, the first item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes for the November 16th regular city council meeting. You had these in your packet. Do I hear a motion?
Make a motion.
A motion and a second. Pick one of those as a second. Any additions, corrections? Hearing none, call for a vote.
Councilmember Grayhouse?
Aye.
Councilmember Middlebrooks?
Yes.
Councilmember Tucker?
Yes.
Councilmember Reeves?
Yes.
Councilmember Head?
Yes.
Next is the adoption of the agenda. Do we have any additions or moving things around?
Mayor, if it pleases the council, since we have guests, I would ask that items 1, 2, and 3, 6, 7, and 4 be moved to the front of the agenda. That is rural zone, branding, and stormwater. And then I have a subsequent addition. That would be item 8, and that is discussion about ambulance licensing application.
All right, you've heard these recommendations. Do I hear a motion to adopt the agenda as changed?
No water.
Second.
Motion is second. Any discussion? Hearing none, call for a vote.
Councilmember Grayhouse?
Aye.
Councilmember Middlebrooks?
Yes.
Councilmember Tucker?
Yes.
Councilmember Reeves?
Yes.
Councilmember Head?
Yes.
Next item we have is a public hearing for the rezoning request for 210 North Hightower Street. Russell, you wanna?
At this time, if there's anyone from the general public who would like to speak on this matter, we'll consider that now. We'll come address the mayor and council. Mr. Bethel, would you like to?
Sir,
Would you like to address the council?
I'll take any questions y'all have or concerns. I don't have anything to present.
Anyone on council have any questions? Or anyone in the public have any other questions?
I'll comment. Pardon me. I'd just like to speak on behalf of Mr. Bethel. He came before the Historic Preservation Commission whenever he put the cover over his parking area, and he made it look really nice. This is the most cooperative person you'll ever work with, so if you have any problems, I'm sure that he's not going to be, parking Mack trucks and stuff, you know, he will do what's best for the city. He always does. So I just wanted to speak on his behalf.
Thank you.
Mr. Bethel, there's just one other question I have. Is there some landscaping that I saw?
Yeah, I plan to put some landscaping. I've got the beds cleared out, but the landscaping hasn't come by yet in front.
Yeah,
In the
yeah.
front. It's underway.
Yeah, I
The
appreciate that.
preparation's done, but I haven't got the bed in there yet.
Right. Well, I appreciate the effort you've made so far to work on that property.
Thank you.
And I noticed that was in there about that, so I knew that was maybe yet to come. So
Sir,
I knew the landscaping part, some of the sides.
you're right. That's got to be finished for me to be satisfied.
Okay, thank you.
I too want to say, Mayor, if I may, that I drove by there and it looks very nice.
Thank you.
And,
Thank
as
you.
Doug, I echo what Doug says, your efforts to do what you're doing over there and improve the area,
Thank
and make all the changes
Looks like
that you
I might
have. It
have
looks
been successful.
fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any further comments, questions, or anything? Not. Have a motion to close this public hearing.
I'll make the motion.
Second.
Motion is second. Any discussion, hearing none, call for a vote.
Councilmember Grayhouse?
Aye.
Councilmember Middlebrook?
Yes.
Councilmember Tucker?
Yes.
Councilmember Reeves?
Yes.
Councilmember Head?
Yes.
Now the appropriate time
Hey,
to vote on
let
that.
me ask you, do we need to have a motion first for the rezoning? Or was that just?
Close the public.
Close the public, hearing. Now would be the time to make a motion to approve.
Yeah, and just for council's clarification, under your packet headed D, it says the recommendation was from C1 to M1. I believe that should be M2, which is light industrial. And council has the authority to place specific conditions upon the zoning. And staff's only request would be that if you are agreeing to the change of zoning from C1 to M2, that there also be placed upon it a condition only for such uses specified under section D, which is to allow the lot to be used for parking and storage of tows and other large equipment. Otherwise, any other of the allowable uses within the M2 zone would not be allowable.
Is this in District 2? Or which district is it? Is this, okay. What are your thoughts and any of your constituents? Is that one thing, one way or another?
I haven't heard anything from anyone about it. Say good, I'm gonna like it.
And so Russell, what you're saying is that we proposed that the rezoning from C1 to M2, but limit it to its use as,
So limit it to the intended requested use by Mr. Bethel. So, M2 is kind of a broad category with a lot of allowances. This would tailor the condition to the intended use and what he's designed it for.
We go into conditional with those conditions.
Mr. Bethel.
What's the conditional? What is the? That wasn't part of this is just a strict rezoning from C1 to M2.
Right, so M2 is broad. What I've
Right.
asked them to do is to narrow that scope. So it would be an M2 use, but the condition placed upon it would be specific to the intended use as you described in your
Where did,
application.
I wasn't aware of any kind of conditions being placed on the rezoning. And when it went before the zoning board, there weren't any conditions specified there either. And I'd like it rezoned straight into, just like everything else around it. There's no conditions on everything else, it's around it. So that's what I'd like. But y'all will have to decide.
Anybody like?
What are some of the things?
Well, I tell you what concerns me about M2. I love what he's doing and what he has done. I almost wish that at some point in the M2, the 4 could almost be, that could become an M2A, and that would claim that for the mill and the junkyard. I mean, that's the part that concerns me, if we could ever separate that out.
It is, and all that is being redrafted, and we hope to have council a rough draft pretty soon.
So, Russell, in a way, I think that if we were able to accomplish that later, maybe we would eliminate any fear of what this would be in the future.
And the conditional zone wouldn't preclude subsequent requests to the body for more allowances within the M2 zone. My only recommendation for the condition was based on statements for it being used as you know, a place where you want to store a boat or something like that. And it seems to be that was the design and intended use. To go beyond that, you know, it's a pleasure as the council.
I'll make a suggestion about, if you're concerned about the utilization, it seems like you could control that outside of the zoning without putting special restrictions in the zoning. You could still control the use of the property with a business license, because you have to have a business license to operate, I think.
So the occupational tax is a non-regulatory fee. It's not a true business license. It's for revenue generation. So a traditional business license you may, but the city has an occupational tax, which the nuance is a little bit different. It's non-regulatory.
Oh, but you have to, I mean, it seemed like you have to have a business license to operate in the city of business, I think.
You would, but if the intended use that you made application for fell within the parameters of the zoning, then I would have to have just cause to deny the issuance.
There's a lot of, there's a lot of expense and preparation that goes into the zoning. And there's no restrictions on anything else that surrounds it. I mean, it's all into, except for the C1 that's there with Vance Fallon. Judy Green's warehouse is M2. The short property across the street is M2. So it's bordered by, however you want to count, the sides are bordered by M2 and C1. Now, there's property on Railroad Street too that's M2 that borders it. So you've got two of the three adjacent properties that are bounding the property are M2, and the one across the street is also M2. One of the two across the street is also M2. So I just, I was just hoping that I could get free of the encumbrances from any kind of, other constraints. So.
And Russell, is it not possible later on to go back and narrow that slightly to, because what troubles me more than anything is the 4. And sort of change the zoning a little, change M2 to.
Yeah, my understanding is that you can set the condition of whatever you want. I mean, there can be no conditions, or you could add conditions. It's totally up to y'all.
Well, so I think that's work on that.
So is there a motion from anyone on this?
I'll make a motion to grant the request to rezone the property from C1 to M2.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
Russell, reiterate one more time to me what's currently being done on that particular zoning on
What?
M2.
I don't have the zoning ordinance. Deanne, can you pull up the M2?
I can do that.
So we're in the process of making some changes, and that obviously would be whatever we choose to include in that particular zoning during the rewrite would be, I guess, that would prevail over whatever was prior to the change.
Right, but whatever use that is in existence when you issue the new zoning ordinance will be grandfathered in either as a conforming or a non-conforming use until it changes.
So in this case,
Whatever you do today is done.
right, but so let's say that currently under M2, there could be a junkyard over there.
Correct.
So that would be, that potential use could be grandfathered
Yes.
into the new. And that's, Julian, that's what I think the thing is, part of the M2, you could, should it be rezoned, open up a junkyard there as long as the fencing was correct. So when they say restriction, I think not to what you want to do, but whatever it survives you. So let's say something happened and your property got into somebody else's hand, they want to do a junkyard, they could. But I don't think anybody around there would want a junkyard.
Well, I couldn't say.
Well, and that's, and again, not to restrict you, because obviously you wouldn't have gone through all the great expense and design that you have if that was your intent to put a junkyard. But, kind of looking long-term is what I.
Just something to consider. You're right, you need to consider that. But I think you also ought to factor in the treatment of that property compared to the treatment that surrounds it. I mean,
Yeah,
there's no difference between what people can do
You're right.
and do across the street and up the street. And,
But that was rezoned after, I don't know what council rezoned. I mean, I can't speak to what was going on with that. I mean, I'm looking forward and, what we're looking at. And that's my only concern, not any of the other things. But again, I can't speak for your neighbors, but I wouldn't think that they would want a junkyard there
well,
potentially either.
I don't want a junkyard, but, I can,
Yeah.
and the neighbors can change. But, in fact, that's why I did what I did with it.
Yeah.
So.
But it could be
if you wanna say
changed is the point.
No junkyards, I wouldn't object to that either. If you want to put no junkyard, something like that, whatever.
And that was the condition. I don't want to put words in Russell's
Condition.
mouth, but that was the condition.
That's very agreeable.
Well, Russell,
Very
so
agreeable.
could we amend the motion to
But-
say we're gonna limit that one thing?
Absolutely, you could, but to the point, every zoning district is contiguous to another zone.
Right.
So if you use that logic, where do you stop?
Yeah, I think this is the only way you can do it to, I think everybody in the room agrees that they don't want to see a junkyard there. But they want to see your beautiful creation that's there. And want to make sure that creation stays there and that after it survives you, that somebody can't come in there and get it to do that. Is my concern, not you. I mean, I don't know, we've got.
So Julian, you would be okay taking out that one possibility?
Yeah, if you just said, I haven't studied, the reason is I haven't really studied M2. I know what I want to do with it.
Yeah.
So if you wanted to exclude, that would be fine with me, that is an exclusion.
So Russell, we have a motion and a second. Can I go back and reword?
I think you've got to probably vote on that motion, I would think, don't you?
Yes.
Yeah.
So we have a motion and a second for to move it to M2 with no conditions. So we'll call for a vote for that now. If you want to change it, we vote no. You got it.
Question. So with this being in place, it affects how we vote. If we vote no now, will that impact
We can go
your
back.
vote
Now,
when you make the adjustment?
somebody else could go make another motion,
We just-
I would
We
think.
just have to make another.
I think the only thing we're voting on now is correct me if I'm
M2
wrong, is
unconditional.
unconditional M2.
Okay.
So that's what the motion and second was for. So we will call for that vote now.
Councilmember Greathouse?
Hey,
Councilmember Middlebrooks?
Yes.
Councilmember Tucker?
Wait a minute, what are you supposed
No.
to be doing?
Hang on.
Well, what we're voting on, right, that motion that is on the table, Mayor, correct me if I'm wrong,
No
is
conditions.
no
No
conditions.
conditions.
M2,
Okay. I'm gonna know on that one. I'm sorry.
I'll recall the vote.
Okay.
please.
Councilmember Greathouse?
no.
Councilmember Middlebrooks?
No.
Councilmember Tucker?
No.
Councilmember Reeves?
No,
Councilmember Head?
All right. Now you could entertain another motion.
So Russell, would I be right in saying this? We want to allow the rezoning from C1 to M2 with the one limitation that number 4 not be allowed, which is building materials, milling, and junkyard.
If that's the pleasure of the council, staff's inclination and the purpose of the recommendation is, it's assumed that Mr. Bethel has an intended use.
Yeah.
And he is requesting a rezone for that intended use.
Most of the time you make the condition is that use is what only way you can do it. Now you can
But
go-
if you only want to restrict that one parameter in the zoning code, then you can do that.
And I guess that's the bigger question, Julian. That's the bigger question. If your intent is what the storage, I guess it's irrelevant as to what other uses may be there, and to make sure that that's the ultimate use. That's what initially what Russell was saying, is to restrict it to only what your use is, and let you do whatever you want to do under that scenario.
Okay, well, I'll take, whatever y'all will pass, but.
That again, to protect ongoing generations and ongoing property owners. That
You can always come back.
You've got to consider that if there was another use for that was compatible with the rest of the properties around there under M2, that they would have to come back through this process again, through the city to do it.
I don't think so. No,
Oh,
no, because and I don't want to speak for Russell nor city attorney, but I wouldn't think that that would be the case if it's an appropriate and approved use under that particular zoning. There's no other council approval. Am I right?
Correct.
Okay, that's fine. I didn't realize that. I thought that was going to be severely limited, not just.
Yeah. What we're
I feel uncomfortable. I don't feel very comfortable expressing my wishes or whatever you call it, because I think y'all. I respect each of you, and I'm confident y'all make good judgments, all of you, and so I don't want to. I'm not trying to demand it.
No, I just want you to you to be aware and understand.
That's all I'm trying to say. I'm just expressing this.
You're trying to get it conditional to that right there, period.
Yes.
That's what you want to do, is conditional to that right there, period. You couldn't do anything else but park, store, tour, logical. If you're okay with that?
Well, like I said, I was hoping it would be just M2 period rather than, limiting in case my parking lot doesn't work out. I'd like to do something else with it, and, that's all.
And I sympathize with him. It's just that I think eliminating that one potential use as number 4 would help accommodate him and what he would want to do, but limit that one purpose there. And so I tend to be sympathetic to him.
But then you got number 5, a mobile home office. Would you really want that there? Which I don't think you would even consider that, but then.
But is that?
But the property sells, and Gary buys it and says, "Hey, I'm putting a mobile home there."
Was that him? Is that him too?
That's him too.
Oh, I had no idea.
So I think that's why I think Russell said we're fine with what you want to do with it as the condition. But
Right.
if it doesn't work out, he can always come back and say, "Hey, I need another condition on it." So I mean,
With that said, I'll make a motion to approve the M2 rezone, approve the property rezoning to M2 with the restriction, or excuse me, the exclusion of everything but items 4 and 5 on the list. here, which would be junk yards, building material yards, mailing yards, as well as a mobile home office. And yeah, and 6. I said exclude. If I didn't, it was that.
So you have a motion to approve this with the conditions of it only including items 1, 2, and 3.
Yes.
That's what your motion is.
Second.
Yes.
So we got a motion, we got a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll call for a vote.
Councilmember Greathouse?
Aye.
Councilmember Middlebrooks?
Yes.
Councilmember Tucker?
Yes.
Councilmember Reeves?
Yes.
Councilmember Head?
All right.
Mayor, the next item for council's consideration, we have moved items 6 and 7. I'm going to introduce Mr. Oh, you're on city attorney.
So our next item,
Y'all got me
she's
on.
trying to skip you, Dee, is the city attorney's report.
I have nothing at this time, Mayor.
So you already did it.
I did.
City clerk's report.
Nothing at this time.
You knew that too. Anything from the city engineer?
Not at this time, but we do have a representative from our engineering firm for a later item, Mayor.
All right. Now we move to the city manager's report.
First item for council's consideration is headed on your agenda number 6. We're going to ask Mr. Taylor Smith to come tell us a little bit about the rural zone lunch and learn.
Hey, council. Hey, Mayor. How you guys doing tonight? I think Oasis, did you include this in the packet? Rules on Lunch and Learn, just a reminder, it's this Friday. We're going to have a representative from the Department of Community Affairs, Ms. Cherie Bennett. She's actually the program manager for the Rural Zone program. She's going to come down, kind of talk about the uses of the Rural Zone designation, the incentives, how other cities have used this program, how we can potentially use this program. I've invited local realtors, local bankers, local CPAs, potential developers. Really, this is a great networking event for the community and a great way to learn more information about the Rural Zone. We'd love to have all of you there. It's free lunch, so you can come and get fed and learn about the Rural Zone. So please, if you would like to attend, you can scan the QR code. I know it's a little modern, but we have a QR code here. If you need help, I don't mind teaching you. I don't mind teaching you. That's not a big deal. But I can also send you an email in the morning with the link. Okay.
You didn't tell us what we were eating. That's the main point.
Honestly, I'd have to go look back and look at the message to tell you, because I've been so busy the last few weeks. I can't tell you. I think we're having some fried chicken or grilled chicken and some hamburger steak and some veggies. I'm gonna feed you good. We're gonna have some good food. Miss Lakeitha, do you mind moving your purse? Just because we're trying to get a response of our council members to our next item on the agenda. If you want to move to that,
We'll go ahead and move that.
Okay, so when I took this position, I think one of the biggest things that the city has faced the last 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, I'm 28, so since I was a kid, is we really don't have of course it went blank on me. We really don't have an image, and we really don't have an identity as a city. So when I took this position, I thought it was critical for us to develop a brand and a logo for our town. And so rather than going through a branding process where we recruit an outside company to come into the community and tell us what our brand is, who we are as a community, I don't like that idea. You can go and spend $50,000, $60,000, $75,000 for a company to come in and tell you who you are as a community. I wanted to reach out to local people, local artists, and ask, what is Thomaston? Who is Thomaston? What is this community to you? So I started approaching some of our local artists, and so I reached out to Luke Haney, I reached out to Fonderosa, I reached out to Jennifer Rogers, reached out to Lane Coggins, and then Miss Alyssa Rawls, our graphic designer, came into the mix. Hannah Hightower. I've had a great team working with me, of local people, local artists, people that are here, people that have left, people that have come back like myself. Thomaston is a special place, and for me, coming back home has been very special. To be in this building, to be in this position, it's heartwarming. And so I'm excited to share with you the city brand and logo that I've been working with. This amazing group of this amazing team for the last few months, and I hope you appreciate it. So this video was actually done in collaboration with Mr. Bruce Dunaway and our high school AV club. So they partnered together, and we got some of the students out. They got to help film and be part of this process.
Thomaston, Georgia is my home. And what I like most about it is our sense of community. People care about each other, and they care about what's happening to you and what you're going through. So when you hear people say, there's nothing like a small town, you're exactly right. There's nothing like Thomaston, Georgia, and Upton County.
I've always lived in Thomaston, and I can't really imagine living anywhere else. There's a wonderful sense of community. The schools are great. I've spent my life teaching at the high school here, and love the kids, love all the people that are here, love the sense of pride in our little community too.
Thomaston is a good place to live because of the small hometown feel and security that is provided from our local police and sheriff's departments. Thomaston is also a great place to raise your kids. We have an awesome school system here because of the teachers and administrators demonstrate care and concern for our children.
The Thomaston Upton school system is small enough to maintain a friendly and safe environment while offering students a range of resources and opportunities often found only in larger school systems. Students and staff enjoy a strong connection with the community. This unity of school and community enriches our students' and employees' lives and ultimately creates a community where young people can thrive. For these reasons and so much more, Thomaston is home for me.
My name is Derek Spivey. My company is Spivey's Creation. Owning and operating my business, Spivey's Creation in Thomaston has been an opportunity that I did not expect. Thomaston is a close-knit community and has been a very welcoming community for my business. I can grow my business at a much lower cost than I can in a larger city. It gives me peace of mind being in Thomaston, where I can catch my breath and sit back and be more creative than I ever been before.
My name is Taylor Smith, and I'm the Economic Development Coordinator for the City of Thomaston. Coming back here after 6 years, I came back because this is home, and it's personal for me. But it's also more than home. This is business, this is food, this is culture, this is history. Thomaston can be whatever you want it to be, but it's the home that you're searching for. Location is definitely doing Thomaston well right now. We're centrally located between Atlanta, Macon, and Columbus. You can live in this community, live in this hometown where you know your neighbors, where you trust people, where people care about you. And you can go to Atlanta, you can go to Macon, you can go to Columbus, but be able to come home to a place like Thomaston. And that's what makes this place special. And I'm glad it's my home, and I couldn't imagine being anywhere else in the world.
This is our diamond in the rough. This is what we've got that so many other places wish they had.
Awesome.
Thank you. So as you can see, primary logo I know you have in your packet would be this right here. So we go back. How about this? I'll let Alyssa, our graphic designer, who has worked tirelessly and been truly at my beck and call for the last 3 months on everything and every request and every design change that I had, kind of explain what we did and how we came up with this and how she's really made this into something special for us. Ms. Ross?
Hi guys, I'm Melissa. So we basically took, Taylor reached out to me. I know that it was online for some time, but I did a capstone project called Common Grounds for my graphic design degree at the end of last year. And I based it all off of Thomaston, Georgia. All of the coffee was named after streets in our hometown. All of the imagery was based off of things that I grew up in. My artist statement with this project was kind of what Taylor experienced, where he left and came back. And I left Thomaston when I was 18 years old. I went off to college. Never expected to feel such an attachment to it that I do now. And that's kind of where me and Taylor really connected, and where me and Luke and Hannah and Vaughn all really started pushing us a little bit farther. It's been a really fun project. I really enjoyed working on it. We just really wanted to capture the spirit that we know is so true for everyone that grew up in this community, that still lives in this community, that Thomaston truly is home. And I don't live here anymore. I went off and I did my thing, and you can ask Taylor, I talk every day about how bad I want to come back. So, Thomaston really is home for so many, and that's really what we built the brand around, is the idea that no matter where you go, no matter where you end up, this will always be the place that we come back to, and we can always find the food and the culture and the art and the love that we experienced for so many years here. And it'll always be waiting for us. So that's what this brand is all about. I'm really proud of it. I'm really proud of the team that worked on it. I hope you guys love it too. So that's the gist of it.
Any questions?
Want to tell them about the banner?
Yeah, so if you look on above you, I actually had some business cards printed out for you all. Mayor, council, you have your own business cards with the new brand. And if you'd like to order some, just let me know and we can make that happen. Hometown Printers did those for us for free, just for you guys. No problem. And so, my goal with this, I want this brand and logo plastered all over our community. I want people to know that this is home, but I love to play on words with it. This is business, this is history, this is culture, this is community, this is love. And I really want to do I have an idea for a new mural project in downtown where we really engage our community through it. This is, what is Thomaston to you? And we just have that word art, of Thomaston can be anything. It's up to us to determine that future.
Mayor, staff's recommendation is to approve the brand as the official brand of the city of Thomaston as presented.
All right, you heard that recommendation?
So ordered.
Second. Third, fourth, fifth, we want all those. I think we're all there, and I'm on my golf shirt with this on it.
Hey, look, I've already got some lapel pins. I got some lapel pins designed. I want to do some banners, some new murals. I definitely want to push this. This is really special, and I think it's something that'll represent our entire community. I can't wait to share this with our entire community.
And one thing I'd say, Taylor, is, and I asked you about this today, there's a number of images here all built around this kind of image.
Yes.
Right here.
We have several alternative logos, secondary logos. So, we can start working with Alyssa to do some different graphics as far as like potential embroidery for some polos, do some t-shirt graphics, I want everyone in the city of Thomaston to recognize that as these are city of Thomaston employees, these people are associated with the city of Thomaston.
I think it's good work.
Well done.
So we have a motion and a second. Any other discussion before I call for a vote?
Councilmember Graham?
Aye.
Councilmember Middlebrooks?
Yes.
Councilmember Tucker?
Yes.
Councilmember Reeves?
Yes.
Councilmember Head?
Yes.
Well done.
Thanks.
Well done.
Very exciting news there. Well, long overdue. Thanks for all those helping to get this done. That's great.
Mayor, the next item for council's consideration is discussion of the 2022 fiscal year budget. Everybody has a copy of your book. We'll really be working off of 2 pages, one being page 2 in your budget binder, and the second being the handout that was provided to council. We gave a comparison of property tax generation versus power cost adjustment tied to our electric utility. I'm not going to go into great detail about page 2. We've spent a lot of time talking about the inclusions, a few of the exclusions in the budget, most of which are highlighted on page 2 in the top right-hand corner. All of these appropriations were predicated on additional revenue generation, and Lonnie has done a good job preparing you a side-by-side comparison of necessary millage equivalent or power cost adjustment to generate sufficient revenue to subsidize the budget. So Lonnie, I'm going to turn it over to you, and I'm going to open it up to council for your consideration in terms of millage adjustment for additional revenues or power cost adjustment or a combination thereof, so that we can finalize the budget in balanced form and formally adopt it on the 21st of December. So not looking for an all or nothing. It can be an all or nothing, combination thereof, multiple revenue sources combined with, expenditure cuts or whatever the pleasure of the council is. Lonnie and I's goal is to try to walk away tonight with a clear vision of what you envision for a budget for the 21st, so that we can polish it and put it in its final form and bring it back for your adoption.
Good evening. As we handed out the forms at the last time we got together to review this, I guess at the budget hearing last Friday, are there any other questions or concerns or comments you have on the electricity versus the taxes, or kind of what you're thinking about, or any thoughts?
I guess one thing, you went over that, looking at property tax impact and the electrical impact too per month. In the end, Russell, what is y'all's recommendation?
So the recommendation is more so tailored to the expenditures. The balance of the budget from a revenue standpoint really depends on the philosophical alignment on how you anticipate to generate revenue, right? And Lonnie and I have explained this, in budget cycles before. Your general fund is not a standalone general fund. It does receive a transfer from electric fund in the amount of projected of $2,671,708. So the thought process has always been that subsidy to the general fund from your utility is okay, provided that you're still meeting your capital need in your utility and you are still within a margin of comfort with your rate structure compared to those other providers who you compete with. I think you have done that. And then there's a different philosophy, and that is that you shouldn't necessarily be subsidizing the general fund with outside proprietary fund revenues, that the general fund should be more standalone, right? And the general methods for generating revenue to prop up the general fund should come from those revenue sources, so that you've offset natural property tax escalation by the infusion of electricity rates. There's no right or wrong answer to how you fund that, other than long-term potential implications of doing that. One, we know that we have a debt model based on our Vogel debt that we need to feed into that. So without additional increase to electricity, there's going to be some natural inflationary adjustment just for bond debt offset that you're going to have to go in. So if you combine recurring operational expenditures in the general fund tied to cumulative and annual increases to the power utility, you could get in a position to where you're not competitive or within that comfort level of comparison between different utilities. That's a long explanation to say that the expenditures that were provided to council are the recommendation of the body, and that the revenue necessary to fill that gap is contingent on one or two means. But I think you six in one hand, half dozen in the other. Lonnie, do you have anything you want to add to that?
Yes, I think if you're trying to make a decision on it, if I were in your shoes, if you want to know what I would do if I were sitting there, what I would probably do is I would vote for a budget that included a potential PCA to handle the Vogel, right, that we could discuss in January, once we figured out what happened so far with this year with what we put back for Vogel, and let's see where we sit. So that's in, that number's in here, 372,000 or something is in that budget. So we would be handling that debt, and that would potentially go up on that. What I would probably do with the remainder, which I think is roughly, we talked about 480, but then that gives us a reserve of 218, so we'd be sitting around 261. You know, I would probably, at this point in time, if you weren't willing to cut any of the expenses, or we didn't want to look at cutting the expenses, we've already gone into the public safety, and as you know, a lot of this is, I tell you every year, you don't cut budgets from toilet paper and that kind of thing, right? It's payroll and capital. But if we're going to expand our public works department, if we're going to do the public safety and the things that we need to do to be competitive, what I would probably do is ask that we just put the, you know, we could put the 260 as coming from reserves, right? Till we figure out what we're going to do, till we see what the tax digest and everything is going to come, and we, you know, we could kind of go that route to it.
But what 260 you talking about?
Well, in my first thing, we had 208. I had 480 in there, right? I had 2 meals, so we've talked about 480,000.
Right.
But that created a surplus of 218,000. Yeah. So I'm saying, really, you're only short. You know, we were talking about that getting over because we were kind of not wanting to pull any more from the electric. You know what I mean? Kind of putting that back type thing. But I'm saying, you could say, look, we've got reserves. You know, we keep 8-9 months in reserves. We could potentially do that and just have that coming out as a, you know, pull from reserves. We could see how everything shakes out. Again, we've talked about we're not going to be able to hire all these public works people at the first. We're not going to be able to hire, you know, we have police officers now. I think we have about 12 positions open. You know, those aren't going to come on all January 1 that are in that budget. So you could kind of see where you were and kind of see. I do caution you that we do have a payment coming up for the fire department, I think, in 2023. So we are going to be, for sure, looking for at least a meal there. That's why we went with the 2 meals. So, you know, in my opinion, I kind of lean more toward, we've gone up on some utility rates. I think our electric rates are very competitive, but I think, in my opinion, our water rates are a little high compared to other people around the state. And so my position, if you're really looking at 1 meal or whatever, I would probably want to lean more toward the property taxes. But again, I'm not concerned as a finance director if you say we're just going to pull that out of reserves, we're okay with the expenses, and then let's kind of see what happens, you know, maybe after the first quarter next year, that kind of thing. I don't think we have to put it all on the electric rate starting January 1, and we don't have to, you know, we could see what happens if our digest were to go up. You know, it's and one thing you have to remember, we talk about taxes all the time, but I'm not saying go up on taxes. My biggest pet peeve when we talk about an increase in taxes is that people had a house and the values dropped and they got the benefit of that from 08, 09, 10, 11, 12, all the way down. And now as those values are going back up, we're rolling that millage rate back. So we're keeping those rates back at where they bottomed out at for those people paying taxes, right? And so I think, you know, I think it's one thing to talk about raising crazy taxes, but at the same time, it's talking about, no, you're investing in your community just to get back to where you were in the 07, 08, 09 range, if that makes sense. I've been a big proponent. I think we really have to take a look as a city when we talk about it's time to renegotiate all joint projects. I think we need to look at all of that coming into next year and really decide, you know, whether we can get that done by the summer or not, I don't know. But to me, you look at everything and figure out, you know, where we're going to be and what we want to do and our vision of things, right? So, I mean, I'm just, that would got to be my thoughts. I mean, you could put it in as, you know, you got a little bit for Vogel. We're gonna put our Vogel debt back. We're going to take care of that. We're going to prepare the city to be, you know, prepared for that in the 20-something, I think it's 23 years when that starts coming on. But we don't have to go crazy with the other stuff.
Yeah, you made mention of the utilities, particularly power and water. You said water were high, and you said that power, we are competitive.
Right.
I mean, what aren't we more on the low side?
Yeah, so when we,
Competitive,
yeah,
when
that's
you-
right.
That's a relative
Well,
statement.
it is, exactly. So, I think when I looked at the rates, we were like, for summer rates, we were currently 11th.
Out of how many?
Out of 92. But when you add in, if we're gonna do that PCA for just Vogel only, right, we would jump up to 17 out of 92. But if you do it for Vogel and the budget that we were talking about, we'd be at 27. And with winter rates, we're currently 26. With Vogel only, you'd go to 35, and then with Vogel and the budget part, you'd go to 43. So you go to about halfway.
I didn't think we had a winter and a summer rate.
Well, that's the way they
Same
compare
rate,
us.
right.
We keep the same rates, but the people they compare us against could have different rates.
And
Yeah.
It's also fair to note, too, that you don't know how the Public Service
That's
Commission
true.
classifies
True.
debt money, right?
Right.
So if you're on a power utility, they may have a recovery cost for coal ash or for nuclear power. I don't know that that's actually factored in the rate.
And again, we have time over the year to see how this begins to settle out expense-wise, but the projection to cover it is Plant Vogel through a 1.35 increase that generates
372,000 that was put back.
2 mil tax.
So another way to look at it is you could appropriate the budget based on reserves that could be funded by property tax once your digest is established and you have till September to quantify your cash flow. Meaning we plug in that 200 and some odd thousand as a reserve number, but if cash flow gets hinky, then come September when you set millage, you could always increase it.
And we've changed a couple of things this year that we really have got to look at. That we're basically pulling from reserves. Like one thing was the 10 grand grant we decided to do downtown for the facade. Right. Well, if we don't have the revenue for that, that was actually coming from reserve. So we will change that up and down some during the year. We have some savings during the year, of course, this year that in some departments as well. So yeah, it's always a moving target, and that to me is if we don't, when we're talking about trying to make a decision to get a budget passed, it's more important for me for y'all to be comfortable. Now, if we were $2 million short, that's different. But I want you to be comfortable with the expenses that we have and kind of the way we have it laid out. And when we do that, and we need to kind of have an understanding on what we're going to do about Plant Vogel, if we're going to go down that road or not. But the other, with a couple $100,000, you could say, look, we're going to pull this from reserves. We've got the reserves sitting there. Then we decide as we go forward.
One thing we saw what Taylor's doing, and which is fantastic, and there are going to be fruits of that.
Absolutely.
Industry and things, and we've talked every year. We've got to be prepared. Vis-a-vis the IDA and the county for that matter, of making sure that we are funded and have the ability to fund the IDA in the sense of incentives and things for when that does happen.
Absolutely.
And or some type number of millage has been discussed in the past of being prepared for that, putting some away for that. Obviously, that's a conversation for another day probably, but as we're sitting here doing the budget, that would certainly be something that we talked about with the county, that they would have to, knowing that the strategy would have to be a kind of a joint one.
Absolutely. And then we have things that are thrown at us, like I think Russell added to the agenda to discuss, an ambulance, the EMS situation. So you could have something like that come that way more than $200,000 by the time it's done. So again, I think I want you to have it in your mind, we got it. I don't want us to say we're going to pull this every year out of reserves. But to me, to sit here and go, look, let's look at this. Let's see what the digest is going to do. Let's see what kind of usage we get from as far as electricity usage in the community. We have a really cold winter. We may collect more money than we did, not going up on rates at all. It just may be a colder winter. It may just cost us more. So,
I know we've cautioned. I mean, we sat here every year and we've talked about, trying to get things operating on their own, standalone basis. We've talked about, how do we prepare for this, how do we prepare for that, and then always, instead of kind of planning, we're just going to pull it from reserves. We're just going to pull it from reserves. And, at some point, the music's going to stop on that. And we've got to get in position to where, we're a little bit more fiscally conservative and having a strategy as to how we're gonna fund this stuff, not just pull it from
Sure.
reserve. That's not
Yeah.
anything
Yes,
on
sir.
you or
Right.
Russell, but man, we just gotta be thinking, I think, long-term a little bit differently than what we have. And, I'm glad we're blessed to be in the position that we're in, thanks to the two, y'all have done a good job of keeping us there. But I just, I think I say it every year, that we've got to, and also we gotta be mindful for the citizenry too. And that certainly is something very important. So balancing all that, and, I guess that's what we're saying we're gonna do here, but.
That's right.
Man, I just feel like we've got to think a little bit differently in how we prepare.
And Lonnie, what do you think that the reserve balance will be at year end?
6.
Yes, roughly, usually around 5.8 to 6.2,
How many months is that?
6.3 million, something like that.
How many months does that represent?
That represents roughly, we have about a $9 million total budget, so a monthly amount of $764,000, so it's roughly 8.5 is what I had. If that's 6.5 is the number we use, so we have about 8.5.
That's good.
But I agree with you, Ryan, and that's why I talked about the taxes and the things. And sooner or later, I think we have to really take a look at the tax side. You see communities go back to the drawing table about more of a homestead exemption for residents, right, for homeowners. That helps, and then you're getting more from your commercial or your industrial customers or whatever on the tax side. Whatever we want to do, but I do think it's been many years, and we got to figure out something on that.
And, look,
with you.
we sit up here in the world, a lot of us all of us are affected one way or another
Absolutely.
on any decision that's made. So I mean,
Absolutely.
it's not something that we take lightly, or I don't take it lightly, because it's going to affect a lot of people in different ways. But it's going to affect you.
Absolutely.
But
Plan on voting at the next meeting on the budget, correct?
Right, but that budget in its polished form will be presented with assumptions.
So you're saying your recommendation is to go with it as presented, but everybody remain fluid in the beginning of the year to see how things settle, to do some amendments? That's
what I think, right, on the money side. To me, you would do it, and if you either wanted to put it in taxes or you wanted to do it one way or the other, or just out of reserves. If it were, I would put it in there, and then let's turn around as soon as we start getting year-end stuff. The first of the year is going to be tough. I mean, I'm going to have to really be quick with a lot of that because we're going to the new software. So I don't have, I'm going to be in here the first week of January trying to close because they're going to be in here trying to get numbers to move, to transfer over. So, as we start pulling that out, we'll have final MEAG numbers. Although they did say, I think today, that they didn't expect crazy differences on the MEAG numbers, but still.
So we saw about a 5% load growth year to date. And we think that our budget numbers that were provided by MEAG are going to be okay, meaning they did not recommend that we modify based on what we had presented.
Which is helpful, because they first told us we're going to have to go up anyways on that.
So one caveat would be, depending upon your funding strategy, if you chose property taxes, the majority of those would be funded within the fiscal year. If you chose to adjust your power cost adjustment, depending upon the timing, you would pay that in arrears, which could impact the 22 budget. Depending upon when you put it in place.
And we've had taxes in there before, and then when the digest comes out, y'all choose not to do it. So it's not like if we say, look, you tell me, look, I want you to fund it out of taxes. That's what we're looking for now. We're looking for the one line item. What do you want me to put the 260 that I need to balance it? Right? What do you want me to do with it? Is it out of reserves or from taxes or from utilities or whatever? And then I put that there, and then, by the time it comes out, you can look at it and go. But I think, does that answer your question?
Yeah, the 260 being the difference between 480, 2 mil tax.
Yeah, the 480, and might as well say 220,
and
218 or whatever the number is, yeah. One thing that I'm cautious as well, we talk about not having raised taxes for many, many years.
Is it
You know,
18 or 19? What's it?
Oh, it's since before Taylor was born, I think. What did he say, he was 28 or something? But I do think we don't really ever look at joint projects in that, right?
Oh,
And
I
we
think
need to
all
look
of
at,
them.
to me, that's why I say I want to include it all, because I do want to include it all. Because when you go and you say, look, okay, well, our taxes are 3.5 mills and Barnesville's 8 or 9 mills, yeah, but if you add in joint projects, we're 8 mills, or we're 8 something. I think to me, when you talk taxes, again, that's why I say that it's all kind of got to be put together as a big picture on what we're doing, and y'all get a piece of it in that meeting where you voted on that the other day, and then you kind of get a piece over here, and I want to look at it when we start talking about a 5-year plan going forward. What are we going to do and how we're going to do it? Let's look at everything and decide, what we want to do. So.
When does service delivery have to be done?
So service delivery, we did 2 years ago, a year ago.
Next year is lost and joint projects.
Yeah, that's what I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I meant lost.
Yeah, lost is by basically we got to have some kind of agreement by September, correct?
Yeah, I think it's December 20th of 22, the certificate has to be filed with the Department of Revenue.
So there's going to be a lot of work on that as well. Going to be a lot of work. I'm going to need y'all to really work on that liquor store ordinance. So that
Well, you're going to need it in more ways than one.
To get that up and operable for me by April or May.
So you brought up a point on the software. You don't see any issues with us converting that is going to, monkey up and mess up the numbers?
No, I don't. It's just a matter of me having time of doing it all. I don't think they've already converted everything through a time frame, and they'll come back and then get the last little bit, and then there'll be some discussion. For example, there's a time period where like Jessica will stop entering bills, and then when they come, she'll have 2 or 3 weeks of bills to enter, and that kind of deal. And then they'll come and do payroll at a time, and then we'll have it all rolled out. So they've already been here twice for a time on, and they got another, I don't know, probably 40 days lined up between January and March that there'll be people on the ground here. So I don't anticipate any of that, and they've kind of got it all spelled out. It's just a matter of me working with them to put it all together. So.
Any more questions about the budget?
So how you have it presented is your recommendation for now?
Yes.
Russell?
So as presented, we don't.
As presented, it has the 2 million tax there.
Yeah.
If you wanted me to, I could leave it in taxes, but back it off to not have that reserved. I could have the 260 number roughly, right? And we could present that as a status quo balanced budget, but it would be coming, the extra money that we needed would come from taxes. Would be listed as a line item as a tax increase.
So what's the 219 earmark? I mean, is it earmarked or is it?
Yeah, we just kind of, when Russell and I were talking about it, Ryan, we talked about, to raise taxes, if you're going to increase taxes, there's multiple public hearings, there's work to be done in that. And so the theory was, if we're going to have to turn around and do it again the next year to pay for the fire station, do you go ahead and do 2 mills at one time? So you'd have that 220 in reserve, you'd almost be ahead of the game a year paying for the fire station. And then you wouldn't have to mess with it in 2023. You'd say, look, I'm just going to go through this process. That's really what we talked about.
That sounds like there may be other things that money
could be by the end. Yeah, it could be whatever. So yeah, absolutely. But that was the theory when we started with 2 meals. We were like, well, if you're going to go, we might as well do it at one time.
Man, because I think if you're going to do that, we really need to be transparent as to
why we're doing it. Absolutely.
And also, if you roll the millage rate back to just offset the budget deficit and forego any surplus, the budget still includes a power cost adjustment.
For Vogel.
Yeah, I mean, that's
which is cumulative of 0.003063.
Be precise.
And how much did we say that we go add to a utility bill?
So for the average consumption,
$2.90, I think.
A month?
Yeah, it's $2.
Yeah, it was $2.90. I think.
fee.
So is that what you would like for me to add that number as the 260 as taxes and present that on the 21st for a vote?
Say so.
Okay. All right, that's
With
what
the
we'll have.
understanding that it's gonna be fluid.
Yeah, I think so. I think, you know, all this ARPA stuff that I have on here and all the, I'll be coming back to you now for a GMA lease, right? We were gonna do a street sweeper. So yeah, there's gonna be a lot of that stuff during that time that, there's a lot of pieces that have to fall in place for me to pull all that off. Now, I'm saying we won't do it, but it is gonna be fluid and it's gonna be some work, so. All right. Thank you.
Next item for council's consideration and action is discussion, potential action of the city employee alcohol licensure. Call your attention to handout H2, which is a copy of our new alcohol ordinance under Article 2, 6-26, subsection E2. I'm going to call your attention. I'll read the whole thing. It says, no officer or employee of the city whose official duties involve issuance and regulation of alcoholic beverage licenses or the enforcement of those beverage laws shall hold any interest, direct or indirect, in any alcoholic beverage license issued by the city or in any established license by the city to engage in the sale or distribution of alcoholic beverages. And then it has a period. And this is the or. It says the city manager, upon advice and consent of the city council, may exempt officers and employees of the city from the provisions of this section upon written finding that such officer or employee's involvement, direct or beneficial, in any business licensed by the city to engage in the sale or distribution of alcoholic beverages would pose no conflict of interest or interference with the performance by the officer or employee of his official duties for the city. So the specific portions of this caveat are the official duties of the city, and if the duties involve the issuance and or regulation of any alcoholic beverage license or the enforcement thereof. So had an issue come up. Everybody knows Lonnie. Lonnie has a business in town, or his wife has a business in town, Lazy J Mercantile. They have requested an alcohol license, submitted all of the necessary paperwork. A temporary license was granted to Mr. Joyce with the condition that it had to be ratified per the council, subject to 626E subsection 2. And that a written finding of no conflict of interest would be attached thereto to his formal application once it moves from temporary to permanent. So with regards to his official duties involving the issuance and the regulation of alcoholic beverages, the city manager is the one who actually issues the license, and the regulation of alcoholic beverages primarily pertains to law enforcement officers and code enforcement officers of the city, and in some instances it could be fire employees. So under the strict writing of the ordinance, found that there was no conflict for Mr. Joyce to hold a license, and probably could forego the formal requirement of the consent of council to issue. But as my practice is going to be, I think is fully transparent to this board and to the city citizens, that any employee or elected official of the board who request alcoholic beverage licenses should come before and make a public disclosure and before the board and the general public. But with that being said, in my review of the ordinance and the specific job duties of the finance director, find that there is no conflict of interest specific to this ordinance section. And if the council concurs, then a formal written statement that I will sign will be attached to Mr. Joyce's application, and the temporary status of his license will be changed to permanent.
So this could be done by any employee.
Yes, so any employee, provided that they had a business and, you know, they have the appropriate lease and incorporation agreements and they get the background check and state license and the zoning and all that stuff checks out, then yes, but my only advice would be that if we do have employees, for the benefit of the public trust and the board, that we disclose all of those.
I mean, they go through the same process as
Yes.
anybody who's gonna do the, come in, that's
Same
not an
fee,
employee.
same fingerprint, same background check. It's just to forego the appearance of impropriety, right?
Hey, Ms. Reeves, I was even approached by a lady that works for the city about trying to work with me or help me on events, and Russell and I even discussed that we think it would be appropriate if I were to ever do that with someone, that needs to be discussed with council as well, even if they're just kind of working there, right? We didn't want, so
Yeah, and it says
we're just real funny about being open with y'all and making sure everybody understands what's going on, so we weren't trying to.
So what staff is asking for is council's concurrence that there's no conflict of interest pursuant to 626E2.
How do you want that?
Motion of no conflict, or motion of concurrence with city manager's position.
Assuming that he went through the same steps as anybody would, I make that motion that
I second it.
be consent to, or excuse me, concurrence with your assessment and procedure.
So we got a motion and we got a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, call for a vote.
Councilmember Greathouse?
Aye.
Councilmember Middlebrooks?
Yes.
Councilmember Tucker?
Yes.
Councilmember Reeves?
Yes.
Councilmember Hatton?
Yes. Next item for council's consideration is discussion and potential authorization to execute contract, or not a contract, to approve the budget with the Thomaston Housing Authority for community development properties. I asked Lonnie to prepare some financials that he can speak to, and we have in attendance tonight Ms. Patricia Allen is here. Copy of the property management agreement is attached with your packet headed H3, and I believe the budget is behind that.
So you already have a copy of the proposed budget?
Yes. Lonnie, you want to?
Yeah, let me hand this out as well. This is something that I've done. Ms. Reeves and I actually working with copy of that for us to discuss here. So every year, as this goes along, in the past I've done it month by month. This year, with everything, I just kind of put it together this week to take a look at. But I schedule out, Miss Allen, what I get from the housing authority, right, on the bills that we pay and the money that comes in. And so then I kind of compare that to the budget as we go forward. So I want to bring your attention to a couple things that we could talk about. One is we got a 2021 budget, yellow, and then a 2022 budget that was proposed. So this is the budget that you had here, right? But what I've tried to do, and I really probably need to get with Ms. Allen at some point in time to try to make sure it's all matched up. I'm trying to guess or kind of figure out what's in management fee or what's in payroll or what's in admin or contract. So my categories may be off a little bit, but the top and bottom line numbers are roughly the same. And so what I wanted to show there is that, you know, we had deposits budgeted of $198 last year. We're at $196 this year. The management fee is budgeted a little higher than, I think it's 11-12%, but they're really only charging us 10 every month right now. So, you know, the actuals will be under that a little bit. The payroll and taxes, for whatever that is in this budget, is only up about 3.5%, which is probably in line with raises or inflation. You know, I didn't see anything crazy there. The admin costs went down some. That's typically the things that, you know, the audit, office expense, legal, insurance seems to go in that category. And then, so the only thing to me that stuck out budget to budget was some of the contract costs. So it looked like, you know, we got heating and cooling contracts, we've got 10 grand. electrical contracts 6, exterminating 3, and then other miscellaneous, I think, was like 5 on the budget here. So those were a little higher, but again, you know, nothing crazy when I compare it to the other thing. Now, when I look at, so I've scheduled out everything that we've got January through whatever we've actually done, I think through like September. So 9 months, and then I gave you that total, and then I projected that for 12 months, right? So we're on track. If everything were to go up, it collect way more than the 196. We would be at the 256 number on that number. And then I kind of have the expenses. Now, what I do have to get with Ms. Allen on is some of these expenses are a little higher than what we had budgeted, right? So I don't have a few of the invoices, right? So they could change, but if everything had been the same, just dividing by 9, multiplying times 12, the payroll would be around 92 when we had budgeted around 83 or 86. Kind of the same way with the admin cost was a little higher and the contract. So you can see the contract is in line for 23 and she's up that to 25. So that's something that I kind of, you know, so to me there's twofold here. One is when you talk about the budget that she's presented that will be in your budget package that we vote on, I guess, on the 21st, I'm not seeing any huge changes from what you voted on last year. I don't see anything crazy alarming out of that. There's money left over for us to 39,000 plus what we have in reserves to talk about capital issues, you know, in the facilities. But I do probably need to look at, as we finish up the year, these items that we may end up being a little over budget on, and let's discuss that and see what, you know, what we're doing. I mean, are we okay with them being over budget because we've collected way more money? Or is it something that we're holding to that budget and we need to go back? Or how does that, you know, how does that work? I haven't really even read the contract in a long, long time. But anyway, those were the two things that I wanted to bring to your attention with my schedule here. Could be some capital in that contract list that was discussed. I didn't see a ton of capital. Normally what I consider capital is when y'all have redone something large. That's a 10, 12, we put roof, you know, put a couple roofs on, we put a, I think we've talked about some cabinets, we've talked about some painting. So, but the general, when they need to run to Home Depot and pick up a refrigerator that's $800, it's usually in here. I don't, but I could pull that out if that needs to be capital. That was an extra thing we could, you know, I could easily do. So I just didn't know if y'all had any questions or what your concerns were or thoughts on the two going forward. So.
Ms. Allen, would you like to cover anything in it?
The difference, one of the things that were different this year is that when we was trying to, I know we was getting the instruction to, like when one becomes vacant, to convert it from gas to electric. And then that is a very expensive task. And I think we only did one this year, and it was almost $6,000 just to get it converted so that the hot water heater, the stove, and all of it is electric instead of having that gas appliance. So what we're wanting to do is to convert those as they come available, or as the appliances go out, then have it converted. But because it was so very expensive, we kind of held off on doing so many. And any time that we get ready to do that, we get pre-approval from Russell. We will call and say, hey, should we do this or whatever? And that's what we do.
Well, we would just be reimbursing her under that, I'm thinking under the contract cost category down there for that, right? Mm-hmm. So if we had budgeted 13, but we've already spent about 17 and a half, so if we had 3 more invoices in, you would assume that it would go up at the same rate we'd be at around 23. So we would be over about 10 grand. So if that was something you approved, right, and said, okay, we're going to do that, and it was 6, then to me that's fine.
It'd be out of scope and unforeseen expenditures that fall within the purview of my spending authority that technically wouldn't need a budget amendment per the contract because we're funded out of the city's budget, out of the community development fund.
And we had extra funds there for that.
Did you say it was $6,000 to convert from gas?
That was she said the extra. Yeah, the estimated was roughly around 6.
Roughly around that much. much, because we try to get, with these, we try to stay local if we can. But I know that on one occasion, I think we did have to get a contractor out of Griffin. But we try to stay local if we possibly can.
Ms. Allen?
Yes.
Maybe even before they ask, explain to me again, or explain to us, so the admin salary that you had, I think of 29, is that, how do you budget that? Like, is that a half a person you're budgeting, or how does that work?
No, we actually have 3 admin people.
Okay.
Because we have one that does intake, or she is the one that takes in the cash and things like that. We call it intake process. And then we have the housing manager that does so many hours a week as well. And then my part, that's the that I oversee that. Then, that's the only admin we have.
Okay.
And then other than, just the supplies and things like that may be counted in there. And then the other, the biggest part of that budget when it comes to, the maintenance that because you have.
The labor.
You have, I'm sorry, yes.
Yeah.
The labor, that's one full staff member.
Okay, so that's what I was asking.
And that being.
So for the admin, it would be a percentage of all 3 of y'all in the office.
Right.
But for the maintenance person, that's one person to look after.
One full
Okay.
person, yes.
So the maintenance person is 100%.
Now, anytime that, and I got that, and I also discussed that with Russell as well. Anytime that we have inclement weather or there's nothing to do on that site, we have the right to pull that person off, and we do not charge that. Sometimes you will see us go back and we'll say, we did not use this person on the site because it was either inclement, because one of the things that you have to realize with CDP property, we don't have access. If they're not at home, we can't go in. And I know you think, some people would think in public health that we can go in because we have an access key. And if the person is not there, we can still get in the unit and make our repairs. Usually if in CDP, we have to, call them or some kind of way contact them to make sure they are home. Because very few of them give us access if they're not home. Every once in a while, you may have somebody say, okay, I'll give you my key or give you an extra key and you can go in and do this the next day or whatever, but not many times. Because they like to be home.
And like in February, the bill said gross salary only $3,500. It said billed 80 hours only, P, C, extreme weather. So instead of a full month, I guess it was 2 weeks, right?
Because there's no reason to have them out there. If they can't get it, if it's extreme weather, bad weather, rainy weather, whatever, they can't get in. I don't want to pay them just to ride around. So I tell him, okay, for today, you're gonna work on this side. We will not bill the city for that.
That's last year. Let me give you this. We got the wrong one printed. We look at this. This is the one that just Alan submitted. This is the one that should be in your budget book. Sorry. This will make more sense compared to that on what I'm looking at there because it's the right. It compares to the numbers that I had. Y'all were like, wait, those numbers are wrong. So you see on this one, you can see where I was talking about the 29,685 for admin, and then down there's a 35,885 for labor for maintenance. Ms. Allen, do you want to talk a little bit about what you had? Didn't you the non-routine expenditures in the back? You want to talk about some of the capital stuff that we've. The last page in this handout that she had, right, was.
We have some things that we want to do. One of the things I can just bring up that right now it is extremely difficult to get contractors. Extremely. Even when we contact them and we get them to give us a commitment to come out, to take a look at the properties, they agree and they don't. Or they agree to do it, they want the contract or give us the bid, but in order to get them to start doing the work, it is almost impossible to get them to do it. So we are having to go back to the table and go back to submit, to calling people to get those 3 bids for them to do work. It's very difficult right now, and not just on the CDP side, but also, you know, in the housing authority as well. It's very difficult, but we still going forward to try to get those. I think we still we had 72,000. I think that was allocated to get 9 sets of cabinets replaced, and I have been keeping in touch with Russell to let him know that I can't get the guy to commit to come in to actually do it, so I have to go back to the drawing table. We were able to get 2 other bids that was a little bit less than the 72, but we still missing. We're trying to get that 3rd bid. So because we require 3 bids in order to move forward. So we're still working on that. But we will be looking at replacing those 3 cabinets. So those 9 sets of cabinets, because that is something that needs to be done. And then we also, we are projecting right now a possible 3 vacancies per year, because we actually is in the realm now of having a 3rd vacancy, and we need to project forward. And as we go forward, even if we don't get 3, we're gonna say we at least think that we're gonna get 3 vacancies per year. And doing that, when they come vacant, we want to be able to do a complete upgrade on them, or what I'll call a modernization, just to bring it up, to make it look more modern today than like you have already agreed for the increase in the rent. So you want to make sure that when we turn one over, that yes, now those are in line with the kind of with the rent that you set. So we're looking at 3 of those, and in addition to the 9 you have already allocated, we want to at least do 3 more. If we get vacancies, we want to update the cabinets at that time. So a lot of the stuff will be done as we turn them over, because doing renovation with people in the unit is almost impossible to do. So we're wanting to be able to upgrade those as they become available.
Any questions?
The last unit that the last unit that was vacant, we actually wind up to upgrade it. We spent about $8,000 to upgrade it. We did new flooring, and then we went in. We did not replace those cabinets in that unit, but we kind of changed the color of the unit, updated the doors, and also they look more modern. They look more like today. The color scheme changed and things like that. That make a big difference if you're trying to increase the rent and make that unit more marketable. So so those are the things that we are doing when one become available, one come vacant.
We thank you for the work y'all do for that. We really do appreciate it.
Thank you.
Anything else on that one?
Lonnie, do we need to vote for me to adopt the budget? or do you have some work?
Yeah, I mean, what I would propose is, we wanted y'all to see this before we do it. I would propose that we vote on it as we do the other on the 21st, right?
Okay.
And we could take a look at, anything, any suggestions you have, but we always, to me, we vote on that one number and then it's kind of, it is what it is on that point. So.
And if you need to, myself and Ms. Tyra,
Yeah, I'll
to
get with
maybe
y'all.
come up with it.
Yeah. I'll send you this sheet with more detail and we'll talk about it. I'll call you tomorrow.
Absolutely, no problem.
We'll do that.
Okay.
Next item for council's considerations, discussion potential action on a stormwater ordinance. We have Mr. Andrew Fleischgood here with us tonight from ESG Engineering, and also Public Works Director, Mr. Kyle McGee. I have tasked them with developing a stormwater regulatory ordinance for the city of Thomaston, specifically for illicit discharge, new residential and commercial structures and or development. I've asked him to come, both of them to come tonight and talk to the city council about proposed ordinance. You should have a copy, attached with your packet, headed H4.
They're gonna read through it.
Turn it over to y'all.
All right, turn it over to Andrew.
All right, walk us through it.
All right, good evening. My name is Andrew. For those of you who don't know me, I work for a trade, who I do know.
We're sorry.
So let's start with let's start with the need, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I was going to give a kind of an overview of the the need for the ordinance, but also the purpose of what we've come up with, background, kind of provide some perspective as to what all this stuff actually means, and then just go hit some of the highlights. If you want to get into the weeds, we can kind of dig down there and talk about it, but it's pretty boring down there. So the purpose of the ordinance is really just to ensure good engineering practice from future development. Essentially, if you had to boil all this down to one example, it'd be you can't just clear an acre of land and drop a Wendy's down and not think about how that impacts downstream people as far as your stormwater goes. You have to prove to the city from an engineering perspective that you're not going to negatively impact your neighbors and that you're being responsible with your stormwater. So the background with this is there's a big 900-page book called the Blue Book, the Georgia Stormwater Management Manual, and I think of it as like an industry standard practice stormwater book. It's the Stormwater Nerd's Handbook, and generally most across the state, most municipalities the size of Thomaston and larger have already accepted that book, or they've kind of modified it and come up with their own version of that book. So what I've tried to do is just take that 900-page book and reduce it down to 10 pages so that developers and engineers have something pretty practical to work with. So the highlights of the book, or of the ordinance, are really that any development that is greater than an acre, or any development that disturbs more than 5,000 square feet, or it creates 5,000 square feet or more of impervious surface, like a parking lot, has to comply with this ordinance. So really, if you flip through here, it's mostly just a bunch of bullet points about things that they would have to submit in an engineering plan that I would review, provide comment back to them, and they would have to correct. Most of it's pretty boring. The meat of it is essentially detention ponds. So if you're going to disturb more than an acre with your development, or if you're going to create 5,000 square feet or more of impervious surface like a parking lot, then you have to add a detention pond. And that's really about it. There's nothing, this isn't, anything that's unexpected from, another civil engineer's perspective. If they had to, spin the globe and drop their finger on a city in the state of Georgia, they would expect that these would be the rules. So this shouldn't really come as a surprise to anybody. This is kind of just all vanilla when it comes to my world. So, you have anything you want to add? Yeah, so from my experience dealing with stormwater in other cities and Columbus, this is the very minimum requirements that we have to implement. There's nothing more restrictive in here than the state really requires.
requires. The way our development is done now is that our engineer says refer to the blue book. Well, this is the blue book in print, so with tailored to Thomaston. And so in creating this ordinance, we noticed, I said, well, what about erosion and sedimentation? What about illicit discharge, which is dumping any kind of pollutants into the storm water system and ultimately into the creeks and rivers. And looking through our ordinance, we did find that we had most of those adopted in different areas. They're all over the place. So let's combine those into one stormwater ordinance. That way when someone types in stormwater or searching any kind of stormwater related topic, we have all three of those articles in one ordinance where they can complement each other. And so we've taken the erosion sedimentation section out of, let's see,
46.
Chapter 46, Article 3. We moved it into this new chapter, and we took the illicit discharge detection and elimination chapter from Chapter 90, which was Division 5, Section 139, and we reassigned it to Section 72, and went through, renumbered everything. That way, if someone wants to cross-reference and check, they can look back. Everything's consistent with this new ordinance. And we really nailed down some of our definitions when we're talking about who owns this thing. That's the big question right now. And this is just concerning new development. All right. So, it's stormwater. Well, who owns it? This clearly defines in a new development who is going to be the owner of that ditch, that pipe, that detention pond, so there will be no questions going forward. That's the one thing I'm very excited about. So that will help us out tremendously.
And from a developmental standpoint, status quo right now, we pretty much have nothing on the book.
It's the Wild West, yeah. Yeah, there's nothing.
So nothing that our engineers or our inspectors or anybody can tie a developer down to, because nothing has been.
We always just point it back to the blue book, and they don't ever really read the fine print and challenge us and say, no, you don't have anything.
So recognizing that, and with the uptick in commercial and residential development that we've been seeing, I strongly urge council's consideration to adopt this ordinance.
Heard that recommendation. I hear a motion.
So,
Second?
Second.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, call for a vote.
Councilmember Greathouse?
Aye.
Councilmember Middlebrooks?
Yes.
Councilmember Tucker?
Yes.
Councilmember Reeves?
Yes.
Councilmember Hill?
Yes. Next item for council's consideration is discussion, potential authorization to execute documents necessary for the city's fiscal year 2022 LNIG submission. This is monies that we derive from the state of Georgia for resurfacing based on formula allocation. And I believe our amount's $119,000 and some change. I've asked Mr. McGee to prepare the recommendation for council, and then any authorization to proceed will have to authorize the mayor pro tem to execute the appropriate paperwork as our mayor conflicts. Now, Kyle?
Yes, so H5 of your council packet, you'll see this is half of our application, the other half is electronically submitted. But to give you an idea for the formula this year, we are eligible for $119,754.86 for a 30% match that we plan on using T-Splosh to match that. The deadline is February the 1st, so we would like to get this signed as quick as possible. The application cover letter this year is slightly different than last year and the previous year, in that the two roads that we applied for last year haven't been paved yet, because of our late paving schedule. They're actually scheduled to be paved in January. But that being said, we did pave $1 million worth in FY20, which were on the FY in 21, which were part of the FY20 paving project. So I've included in the application to GDOT the FY21 resurfacing list and the FY20 resurfacing list. So as the city manager stated, the letter will be coming from the mayor pro tem for conflict of interest with GDOT, with our mayor.
And the roads were pulled off the priority list that we've already approved.
The priority list that we already approved, that it's on schedule to start next month.
And technically, that priority can be changed by council anytime, even up into after expenditure. As long as you expend funds on an approved method, you can go through a modification process with GDOT.
Yeah.
So North Bethel is on this list, should still be on this list.
It's on there.
Yeah, that's not the one where we were changing it out for.
A South Bethel.
South.
Actually, Ms. Reeves, I believe you are correct. North Bethel was removed due to lead copper.
That's right.
Yeah,
That's right.
Also,
You're right.
It was removed due to lead copper. And that is the only one on this list. And I clarified that after I saw it, but I did not make this correction.
and we replaced it with,
South Bethel
Right.
stormwater.
Full project.
okay.
So the goal would be to mitigate the lead and copper prior to paving. And we got a bunch of that to do.
We need a motion
To approve as presented.
to approve and allow Mayor Pro Tem to sign.
Motion to approve with the correction of North Bethel, also being changed to South Bethel, whatever the corresponding mileage is. I don't know
Second.
what that, if it's probably gonna change as well, huh?
Yeah.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, call for a vote.
Councilmember Greathouse?
Aye.
Councilmember Middlebrooks?
Yes.
Councilmember Tucker?
Yes.
Councilmember Reeves?
Yes.
Councilman Net?
Last item for council's consideration is general discussions regarding the ambulance licensing application. I'm sure everyone is aware. The community ambulance let the zone go back, and there's consideration for how that zone is going to be assigned. I have talked with the county manager regarding this, and I'm actually working off his notes. And the county commission, I believe, met on it earlier. So the county is interested in applying for the zone. So how currently our ambulance is structured, our ambulance service is structured. The zone is a county-wide zone, but the city and the county have agreed via intergovernmental agreement to provide funding for that service via our joint projects agreement, which is pro rata based on the tax digest. So in this application process, and I've got some dates here for you. So that application has to be submitted into the portal by December 26, 2021. All right, so that's pretty close. If all of that goes through and the application is approved, then the county will be able to compete for for the EMS zone, and that application will be due into the portal by January 6th. That is a 10-day review. The deployment day is February 14th, 2022. So the intent of the conversation tonight is just to reiterate to the City Council that the ambulance service is a joint project that we have solidified via intergovernmental agreement. However, the licensure for the zone, if successful, based on the application, that would be held by the county, who in application would partner with a private practitioner whose business is the provision of ambulance service. So over the course of the next couple of days or week or so, I'm going to be meeting with private ambulance providers. I know that the county has waived their formal procurement methods because obviously with a tight time frame and having everything submitted by December the 26th into the portal, we don't have time to go through formal procurement. So we're going to have meetings with potential partners that can help us apply for that so that hopefully we can be successful in attaining the zone. I know that they have met with AmeriPro out of DeKalb, EMS Care out of Columbus, and AMR out of LaGrange. In addition, the county has brought on a consultant to help them weed through the process so that they can hopefully have a successful application. So sometime prior to the 26th submittal, we anticipate that we will have a memorandum of understanding or some sort of contract provision that would then be executed, by the county commission that would be contingent upon, a successful application. However, the city's involvement comes in on the financing piece, right? Since we have an intergovernmental agreement with the county, we would be responsible for 35 or 36% of whatever type of subsidy is negotiated with a private partner. Without, foregoing the competitive nature of the conversations, would prefer that, that fee that we have independent conversations so that we don't chill, the response that we get for potential partners who would have come in and help us apply. So one would be selected as a partner with the county, and then the city would be party to that via funding under our IGA as part of joint projects.
How do we prevent a similar situation occurring, which has occurred in the past 18 months?
So my understanding is that control over the license at the county level, you would not be beholden to a private entity, and because you would be the holder of the license, you could then have clawbacks in your agreement with your partner, or you could choose to so divorce your partner if certain provisions of the contract were not met, and you could select another provider.
Will we be present at all meetings, negotiations, that sort of thing? And I know we're 36% compared to whenever they're
so Jason has invited me to all of them to participate in those conversations.
We have 36% of the county's population, but we have the highest density population based in the county. How would that affect the ambulance zoning and assignment?
So the way I understand, the zone is the county proper. So there is no zone within the zone, whether it be by incorporated boundary or whether it be by density. So higher level of service could be dictated, but it's dictated for the entire zone. It's not parsed out based on political boundaries. So if you want a higher level of service, you're not going to carve that out for the city proper. That's going to be for the entire zone, and all of that is subject to whatever, subsidy has to be provided for guarantee of the provision of that level of service. And that's what we have to negotiate through and talk with the provider about.
I guess between our consultant and then any kind of due diligence done on whatever providers that we interview, they will kind of determine how many we need based on said density to be able to serve not only that density, but also the
Yes.
rest of the county.
And I anticipate some sort of joint session between city and county prior to submittal for a budget amendment necessary to provide whatever subsidy is negotiated in the process prior to submittal.
The current company, when are they out of business? When do they stop?
So, yeah, February 14th, Valentine's Day, and my understanding is that the time frames on the license and the application is based on the departure date and it's statutorial on the backup and when applications have to be made. So that's how they tied it back to a December 26th date. So, I guess yes, sir.
No, and I guess we tried to, obviously this is a big decision financially and otherwise, and to make it in such a short amount of time, I guess we tried to have it extended to provide that kind of time for us to.
So a request was made to the current provider about backing up that exit date, and the answer was no.
It just seems kind of like it all kind of
that wasn't
played out.
specifically to me. I asked the question
No.
and was told that the petition had been made and they were denied.
So you say 2/14 is that last day?
Yep. So
Those days are done on purpose.
what I'm telling the council is that we will be bringing you something on a very short time frame that will have foregone traditional procurement methods, but it will be negotiated in good faith with the city president, county president, consultant present, and ask for some leniency and trust that both the county manager and I will bring you a recommendation and a partner that's in the best interest of both bodies, that's financially feasible to meet the needs of our community, not only the county but also the city. And then any specific questions or concerns that the council may have about service provision, please come talk to me and I'll make sure that those are included in any conversations that we have with potential providers.
All right, approximately how much is this going to cost and how are we going to pay for it?
So I would prefer not to talk about the cost, not to forego transparency, but because we are meeting with multiple providers outside of a formal procurement, I wouldn't want to publicly advertise what the going rate is in hopes that we can negotiate between the parties. So I have some indication of an associated cost that I'd be glad to talk with you independently, but wouldn't want that public for the providers to know on the front end prior to negotiation.
But any of that money is going to be through joint projects.
So any of the money subsidy would be funded via our intergovernmental agreement, which is joint project. So whatever the cost would be, the city share would be funded through the joint project millage rate. And it would be roughly 35% of the total cost.
I guess would the hospital be a part of these discussions?
So the hospital, Jeff, is part of the discussion, and my understanding is that they have multiple agreements and arrangements already with different providers for transport.
Emergency or non-emergency?
Transport, non-emergency.
That's where they make the money.
So we're going to make the best out of the situation. We have a tight time frame, but there is a plan. We've got a group. Council will be brought or kept in the loop as things progress, but this is going to be a non-traditional process of selection due to our tight time frame.
We gotta have ambulatory service. That's we've got to meet that deadline.
That's all I got, Mayor, other than a brief executive session to cover real estate and personnel. John, anything else on that?
I just wanted to bring up one thing. I've had several people approach me about, that are involved in recreational activity and that have approached me about a waiver that's asked to be signed. And I guess, there's a couple of things in that waiver that just, their complaints seem valid. And I just wish that we can, I don't think our city attorney has seen it, but somehow it's something that's being asked people to attest and sign to, people that are out there playing pickleball, people out there playing basketball. And I don't understand where it came from. And two, I don't know that we had a chance to look at it, but some of the things that give me problem and give those people who've approached me about it, and I think they're valid complaints about requiring them to attest to having a physical. And the other one is it really seems to protect, I guess, the Department of Recreation from gross negligence, which I don't know how you can honestly protect yourself from gross negligence. But nevertheless, I just wanted to bring it up. Say I've been approached by a number of people about it, that want to go out there and engage in recreational activity, but just this waiver has come up. I'm not sure how long it's been out there, but I wish that our attorney, Russell, and maybe you would have a chance to look at the waiver and sort of give us your opinion on it and whether it seems to be a burden on those people who want to go and use the recreational department.
Who's asking them to sign this waiver? Who at the city center?
Jeff?
I would say this here, that first of all, the director and the county manager had a meeting with the pickleball players about 2 weeks ago. And this here came up, about the waiver came up, and they was very upset about the waiver. But the new director came up with the waiver, and it was approved by the county manager. And that's probably why you need to get with the county manager and talk with him about it. But anyway, that's where all that came from. And it came up in the meeting, and they was very upset. The public was very upset about it.
But Jeff, I don't think it's just limited to pickleball people. Everybody who's engaged in a recreational activity has to sign this.
Well, to my understanding, it's only pickleball. Now, I don't know about the rest of it. Because
can y'all, Russell,
And I had seen, I saw the original and I saw a revised, I think the physical piece maybe was taken out, and that's why I had some questions for Deanne, and she explained the difference between negligence and gross negligence.
The physical doesn't bother me as much as the gross negligence.
I think too, it says as far as the physical within the last year, I think it puts a time line on that, I think.
But let me ask you, a physical costs money to go have a physical. Is that a burden on lower income families that might have people, if it's only related to pickleball players, that seems odd. If it's required of everybody, then is that not a financial burden? And I would assume that how can we I guess we could require a physical, but I just think that those two issues bother me, and I wish y'all would just look at it and talk with them.
I don't understand why you'd only have pickleball sign it, not the other sport. Right. I mean, I can go out and play basketball and be fine, but I can't go play pickleball.
And I know before you sign up to play sport, I know when I played sports in high school, I had to have a physical every year before they'd let me play high school sports.
Well, typically the school would have somebody there on site to do it. It was a very, very limited physical, I assure you. I just had to get one. Not for me, but for
So I guess the question is why require it for some sports and not others?
But the more problematic to me is the issue of releasing from gross negligence. Negligence is one thing, but gross negligence seems to be a burden.
Pickleball's a full contact sport.
Anyway, if y'all
We can look into it.
Play certain people in
That's
one.
right. Yeah, it's tough being up there.
I don't know. Mr. Gary left too early.
Yeah. You're right. Oh, geez.
All right. So if there's no other business, we need a motion to go into executive session for real estate and personnel, right?
Motion.
Second.
Any other call for a motion? Call for a vote, not a motion.
Councilmember Rittenhouse.
Aye.
Councilmember Maddox.
Yes.
Councilmember Tucker.
Yes.
Councilmember Reeves.
Yes.
Councilmember Hale.
Yes.
Starting to wear down.
Take a restroom break.
Wear me down. Wear me down.
What's your charger down there?
Yeah.
You living in the last meeting?
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Brian, thank you very much, sir.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mayor.
All right, appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you, Russell.
Yes, sir.
Sorry, I
Mr.
didn't
Julian.
mean not to-
No, you're
Good to
good.
see you.
You didn't? Okay. That makes a little more sense. That makes me feel a little bit better.
I just never seen them do it.
You can't pick and choose.
You're looking dog out.
Alright, we're back on.
Leave your pen.
All right, I'm taking like Mary Ann's dog.
All right, we're back in regular
Charlie?
session.
Or you leave it?
We got anything else? If not, I hear a motion to adjourn.
I make a motion.
All in favor, say aye and go home.
18 weeks old.
We're still on Oasis.
Yeah.
Still on?
I would just like to
Yes,
state
sir.
for record that the city of Thomaston
You can just
supports
leave them there.
Michigan.
I'll grab them.
No.
Go blue.
Let's make a motion to accept the resignation of our police chief.
I lost all my.
Hey, Mike, is